Ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, there is a turning of the tide, and the truth is coming to light. Those of you who know Man of Steel Answers, you're about to get the truth. All those people who were saying that this is not Zack Snyder's film, not Zack Snyder's vision, I want you to listen to Man of Steel Answers. I will read everything. I will spare you nothing. A lot of you respect Man of Steel Answers. Now it's time. Now it's time. Before I do that, I just want to show you an enlightening video. Wonder Vaughn did this beautiful picture. Again, another fan, true fan of the DCEU. Wonder Vaughn, like father, like daughter. That's Zeus above there, and that's Diana, his daughter. And I thought this was awesome, so I just wanted to share it with you guys before I get into Man of Steel Answers. See, it's about the truth. And on this channel, we talk about the truth. But I'm not alone. I told you guys this. Not alone. There are many of us out there. I got this from a brother on Twitter. I told you the tide's about to turn. And let's get into the truth. Don't be as gullible as Kevin Smith. And I'm going to read everything. Kevin Smith can be quite lovable. It is for that reason he was the co-host of Dawn of the Justice League, network television event advertising DC's coming slate and included in every BVS disc. He hosted the Yahoo Movies release of Man of Steel. I've lost track of how many times I've referenced him on my show, either for his John Peters story or Suicide Squad or more. He is a comic book store owner, host of Fat Man on Batman, and his transparent everyman quality gives him substantial geek cred. But as an everyman, he is as susceptible to falsehoods and clickbait as everyone. On December 25th, Kevin Smith published the following Fat Man on Batman episode, which you can see below. I'm not going to play that episode for you. You can go ahead and check that out if you want. I wouldn't give him the time of day. Upset at the altercations to Justice League, Kevin pulls up a website and shares 22 alleged alterations to Zack Snyder's original vision. The only problem? They're not real. Not exactly. Kevin is not affirming any of this to be true. He doesn't know. He just bookmarked a WordPress post that merely parrots with minor altercations editorial and without attribution a RDCU Leaks post on Reddit published November 18th, which was promptly discredited and deleted. Unfortunately, not before obtaining traction online, being published in other clickbait outlets like Nerdist News. Come on, guys, do better. Here's our history lesson. The Reddit's post history is telling. It's filled with inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and the same kind of vague attempts at teasing and disclosures which gets used in cold readings for fraud psychics and spiritualists who prey on the hopes and pain of others. Only a lot less deftly and readily apparent. Nevertheless, the timing is telling. Let's break it down. October 19th, 2017. Viewer Annon's 54-point plot breakdown. November 13th, 2017. U.S. fan screenings of Justice League. November 17th, 2017. U.S. Justice League release dates. November 17th, 2017. Ultra Cal's 31s to 138 word leak. Changed, deleted, and Snyder versus Whedon. That's when it came up on the internet. This is what Dave the Film Junkie and all these other so-called intelligent people, including FilmGov, are going off of. Yes, you guys have been duped, as you will realize soon. Well, let's just follow the timeline. November 17th, Ultra Cal's 31 leak is corroborated by viewer Anon. So viewer Anon and Ultra Cal 31 are working together. November 18th, original 21-point differences comes up and it's immediately debunked. UltraCal 31 debunks differences. November 19th, The Ascended Ancient leaks footage debunking differences. November 19th, 2017, the WordPress site that Kevin reads posts differences. November 22nd, 2017, the Nerdist publishes a video based on differences. And differences have been debunked. Just remember that. November 24th, 2017, LDN Film is moderator verified and does an AMA debunking differences. Differences is based off of viewer Annan's 54-point plot breakdown. So UltraCal 31 actually disagrees with Annan. Let's just keep it going. November 24th, 2017, the WordPress site edits differences to remove debunked parts and add LDN film points. November 29th, Kevin reads WordPress version of differences on Batman. Okay? What am I getting at? Differences is illegitimate. It comes after theatrical release and is based entirely on information already known or fabricated guesses. It sources viewer Annan's breakdown, which I told you, UltraCal 31's 2,000 word leak, the litany of pre-release press and promo materials, and general, largely wrong, assumptions about Zack Snyder's inclinations, intentions, proclivities, and style, with a sprinkling of studio or fan-mandated fixes. Except to the extent it draws from accurate sources, none of the original material is real, true, or truthful. It is a guess. Outside of its elaboration on information we already know before November 18th, it provided no insight, nothing verified, nothing corroborated, and it is frankly a lie. We'll go into what it is in a minute, and you'll see what I mean. Confirmation. This shouldn't have to be said, but just because a celebrity reads a website aloud doesn't confirm, verify, substantiate, or corroborate the content. Kevin didn't fact check. He has no source. He does not know. He just took a WordPress post to be true and gave it 60,000 more eyes than the 80,000 views Nerdist gave it 1 week earlier. Alleged audience confirmation. What about the audience member allegedly breaking NDA to confirm what Kevin was reading off? To us, she's faceless, nameless, and impossible to verify or authenticate in any meaningful way. If you have an ounce of skepticism, you have to cause to doubt some random person allegedly having inside knowledge. Nonetheless, even taking her at face value, what did she say? In the video, which you can go back and check, but I'm not going to, she said, I promised them I wouldn't talk today, but yeah, most of that stuff was in there. A little later on, that's the version that you saw. And she says, I saw that and I saw the other version too. Continuing onwards, in terms of seeing them both, what did you think? I like the first one better. You saw Darkseid? Yes, there was Darkseid in there. Kind of like the finished, but not really. There was no Darkseid in the finished theatrical cut, by the way, folks. Not fully finished? No, dressed in a suit, kinda. Steppenwolf is killed by Darkseid on Apocalypse. That I did not see. Did Cyborg die in your version? No. Reasonable skepticism. I have to say, I don't find this audience member credible. It's an old cross-examination standby, but we'll use it because it works. Ma'am, were you being truthful and honest when you signed your NDA? Because non-disclosure form, that's what she had. That means you can't talk about the film, okay, for a certain period of time. Were you being truthful and honest when you promised you wouldn't talk last week? So now that you're talking, we see that your word, integrity, and honesty mean absolutely nothing. So all you need is attention to break a contract, to break your word, to break a promise. So how much attention do you need to bend the truth, if not outright lie? She lacks the integrity to keep a contract and is willing to break it for attention. Who is to say she's not willing to lie for attention too? I mean, that makes sense. The real sticking point is the dark side stuff, where she says a dark side, kind of like The Finished, and dressed in a suit. There aren't multiple dark sides, so it would never be a dark side. There isn't a finish or final dark side in the theatrical cut, so how could she compare her alleged version to the non-existent kind of finished version? And I'm not going to elaborate on how Darkseid would be represented in an unfinished VFX, but it would be unusual to describe it as dressed in a suit whilst knowing it was a Darkseid. She was rather unconvincing. Remember, this is November 29th. Differences has been disseminated since November 18th. And what if the audience member was one of the 80,000 people who watched it on Nerdist or other outlets already, believed it to be legitimate, and simply parroted it here, pretending to be an authentic insider? In theory, nothing she says proves she's someone who saw a screening that even the author of Differences claims was WB executive exclusive, contradicting her, versus an attention-desperate person who read a rumor they believed and claimed as their own inside knowledge. It is impossible to tell if she's repeating an earlier rumor on her own actual experience or her own actual experience from what little she shared. Nothing new, nothing original, specific, or testable. Even if true, she debunks differences. All that said, pretend she's absolutely 100% honest to the best of her ability. She confirmed nothing from differences, not a single specific point or element or enumerated thing is corroborated by her answers. Only vague, broad, sweeping, incomplete generalizations. Most of that stuff in there, not everything you said is exactly how it is. That makes it impossible to verify any individual list item because we don't know if it's included in most of that stuff or not rendering the list worthless. If she's being truthful and if differences is based off of a legitimate leaks prior to November 18th, I should hope that some of the stuff was in there. We should expect it. That doesn't legitimize or confirm differences, only the reliable sources it drew upon. It doesn't make the list itself reliable. Instead, when confronted with specific, enumerated, explicitly listed items from differences, she denies seeing them. If she is reliable and truthful, she says Steppenwolf isn't killed on Apocalypse and Cyborg didn't die, in direct contradiction to differences. How desperate do you have to be to start pushing differences as Zack's vision, given it is completely uncorroborated and the sole source of authority explicitly debunks the only two explicitly unique points related to it? Why would you push differences when it has been contradicted and debunked by various insiders, our own eyes, the author's lack of credibility, and when we have a wealth of legitimate information to draw from? So you may say, what's the harm? And just so you guys know, the so-called Zack Snyder fans out there are actually drawing from differences. That's why Man of Steel Answers is talking about differences so much. And we'll go through some of the items on differences. Don't worry. We'll go through them and we'll debunk every last one of them. Because Man of Steel Answers, one of the nice things about Man of Steel Answers is he makes sense of things so easily. And I was talking to a guy online. He was talking about, it's so funny. This guy was saying that, we saw Alfred talking to someone. And he said you would come. Let's hope you're not too late. And he said that doesn't fit in with the movie that we saw with Superman. We don't even see that scene. It doesn't fit in with Zack Snyder's vision. And I, just using a smidge of critical thinking, told him, well, let's think about it. When we see Superman, he's with Lois Lane. Batman brought him back to join the team, right? So if he's with Lois Lane, between the point where he was with Lois Lane and then he had Lois sent him off to find the team and to help Bruce, that piece of information would fit right in between there. So when Superman shows up finally and Batman's happy he comes back and he fights Steppenwolf, he gets the famous line, Well, I believe in truth, but I'm a big fan of justice. When he said that line, clearly in between that time and his time at Lewis Lane, he would have visited Alfred so he could find out where the team went. And Alfred would be in real time up to date, could up to date him immediately, exactly where they are. So I'm just saying that little piece in the trailer that we saw was just a piece that was removed from the movie. It didn't change the tone of the movie. It didn't change the plot of the movie. It didn't change the story of the movie. It was removed for time. And Joss Whedon actually created a much more suspenseful moment. We didn't know when Superman was coming back. And when he came back, it was awesome. But the guy, he couldn't see that. So he was like, it could have been earlier on in the film and stuff. And I'm like thinking, no critical thinking skills. I see. None whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Some people are like that. You know what I mean? They're sheep. They go with the crowd. They go with the narrative. They don't critically assess anything. And so they're easily duped. And this campaign, these so-called Zack Snyder fans, oh, Zack Snyder does dark, deep movies. Yet, this Justice League movie, which is actually darker than most comic book movies, and very solemn, and very deep, they couldn't see it was Zack Snyder. I just don't get it. I don't get it. This is Zack Snyder's film, literally, and Joss Whedon sprinkles things. He may do reshoots, but it's still what Zack Snyder was going for anyway in the reshoots. He just kind of tweaked it so the actors could say some things differently or run the lines a little bit differently. But it's Zack Snyder's vision you're watching on that screen. And the irony of the thing that hurts me a lot is they're actually rejecting Zack Snyder. And Man of Steel is basically answers as saying the exact same thing I'm saying. So how deep you can be? How deep can you be in a film where you are ready to discredit the creator's actual stuff? How deep can you be? So let's go into the other part. Well, what's the harm? Psh. Let's go to it. Let's go to it. Because I'm going to go all the way through Man of Steel Answers. Well, if it isn't true, what's the harm in promoting it, sharing it, insisting upon it? So what if an unsubstantiated rumor gets passed around? Why can't we have our fantasy or ignite outrage and action over a fantasy? Integrity and values. The same thing Superman was talking about. If you're asking these questions, we part ways on a fundamental level in terms of values. Yes, in some sense, fantasy is harmless. However, irresponsible dissemination of misinformation, the failure to fact check, the valuing of sensation over integrity, honesty, and truth, getting in the habit of this over leisure leaks into how your life, your real life, getting into the habit of this over leisure leaks into how you live your life. Apparently he kind of did a typo here. This should be you. So let me just say it all over again. However, irresponsible dissemination of misinformation, the failure to fact check, the valuing of sensation over integrity, honesty, and truth, getting in the habit of this over leisure leaks into how you live your real life. One of the reasons we love comics, mythology, and stories is because they provide the narratives we use to frame and order our lives. But if we don't value truth, journalistic integrity, honesty, critical thinking, and empathy, we will fail to recognize falsehoods and get swept up in illegitimate narratives all too easily. Okay? And that is what's happening now. This lie was circulated, these rumors and lies, and even now, rumors and lies about what's happening in WB are being circulated. Some of the things are true, and most of the stuff is lies. And it's this lack of integrity that I read about in Psalms 37 this morning, 12 to 15, and it will fall. I don't have to make it fall because the truth is coming out right now. It's a different day. It's a turning of the tide. And I wouldn't be surprised The people who are circulating these things are not Zack Snyder fans. They're not even DC fans. They circulated this nasty rumor to watch the DCEU fall. What if it's false? But setting aside your own integrity and character, let's do a balancing test, or Pascal's wager. Let's imagine that I'm right and differences does not accurately reflect Zack Snyder's vision of the film. If you respond to, fight for, promote, insist upon, and get outraged over differences, and it isn't Zack's film, then what are you fighting for? Getting upset over? What message are you sending? The people who know, I mean really, actually, truly know what Zack's film would have been compared to differences, now know you don't actually care about Zack's film, which is something else entirely. They have no reason to admit, disclose, or release something that doesn't match what the ill-informed are clamoring for. It ends up being an insult to the people who worked on the earlier version because people keep saying, man, we should have got differences, while the filmmaker hangs their heads and thinks, but our film wasn't that. Differences nonsense. It was an open declaration there's no market for the actual and authentic thing. People would rather have the fantasy they've conjured. What if it's true? Conversely, let's say I'm wrong. What is so different about differences that you can't simply promote all the authenticated, established, verified, corroborated, proven, known, and seen differences between the advertising, promotional, leaked, and mentioned in print, press, interviews, junkets, social media hints, etc., omissions, and that changes that we know can prove that it's indispensable? So what he's saying is, if differences is true, okay, then why not just promote differences? You just promote differences, right? Is it Cyborg's death debunked by Kevin's audience member? Or is it Darkseid debunked by LDN Film? Is it Perry debunked by Lawrence Fishburne? Is it because the author of Differences lacks the imagination to make the first scene of the film anything but the first scene in the trailers? Are we really losing anything discarding the discredited differences and instead relying upon all the other authenticated information, even if differences magically turns out to be true? No. Seeking to rely on more credible facts because you value truth, honesty, and integrity is never a mistake. Think critically. So here's the abridged differences lie test. First one. It was shown only to WB executives, so conveniently impossible to corroborate. This, obviously, is a lie. Because if they say it was only shown to WB executives, then they wouldn't see it. Correct? Justice League started with Bruce recruiting Aquaman. This is just a failure of the imagination projecting the trailer directly into the film. So the very first trailer we saw was Bruce Wayne slamming Aquaman against the side of a building. So clearly, they just took what was in the trailer and said that was what really happened. Absence of any specific extended dialogue. That's a lie. How do we know this? Very simple. Zack Snyder's style generally is minimalist. Absurd Irish library scene debunked by leaked footage. So we already know that Flash never met Iris inside of any library. Okay? No dialogue during history lesson. Ares is already in the credits. They were saying that they never saw a shot of Ares, Zeus, and I think it's Artemis. Or I think they were saying, no, they were saying it was Antiope. So they said Antiope, Zeus, and Ares, they had a dialogue. But the thing about it is, Ares was already in the credits. Zeus was already in the credits. Artemis was already in the credits. And that extended scene, they say, wait, it was talking with a Green Lantern or something like that. It's a lie. There was no dialogue during the history lesson, and that was debunked. All of this stuff has been debunked already. Using Green Magazine's October issue, a bungling of Darkseid's family tree as legitimate. They even said Darkseid was in the movie. Alright, but they borrowed it from Green Magazine's October issue. Number 7. We already knew by September 5th that Karen Bryson had been cast, and by October 15th, a promo event in the Philippines revealed the car crash origin. Alright? And not only that, we also saw it in the trailers. We saw where the car crashed in the trailers. Karen Bryson, by the way, was Cyborg's mother in the movie. Okay, so that's what they're talking about. We already knew in June 2016 that Vulko was cast, and the additional Atlantis scenes from verified leakers don't corroborate. Okay, so the people who are saying that he had a conversation and so on, they don't match. You know, Vulko and him and I believe it is Mira, they were saying had a discussion, but the different people who leaked this discussion, they don't match up with each other, so it's not true. So it's just somebody's imagination on that. The people who actually saw the screenings, they can actually tell you what's up. You know who saw a screening? JVS. JVS saw a screening of Justice League. And I'm pretty sure JVS will tell you the screening was the same as the movie that he saw. Deleted line. No protectors means raising a dead Kryptonian. Is unnecessary for Steppenwolf to win, and certainly unnecessary before Earth falls. Do it after winning. No race to resurrect. So they were saying that there's this long extended version where Superman is raised from the dead and Steppenwolf has him under control and all of this elaborate nonsense. No, the way how Superman was resurrected is exactly how he was resurrected. Batman has no way to know about the Codex, which is very true, or that Steppenwolf knows about the Codex, which is also true, or that the Codex has anything to do with alleged resurrection without a ton of expositional technobabble, which is true. And that debunks it pretty much. You know, they were saying, oh, there was some Codex for Superman to rise from the dead and blah, blah, blah. Nope. They were never going to use the Codex route. What you saw with the resurrection of Superman was exactly what Zack Snyder was going for. Post-credit scene filmed by Snyder included Lex's escape decoy, meaning they never intended Deathstroke breakout scene. Okay. Alright. First of all, I don't think Zack Snyder goes for post-credit scenes to start with. So I don't think Zack Snyder was going for a post-credit scene. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And the second thing he's saying is that the post-credit scene filmed by Zack Snyder included Lex's escape decoy. And we know this from behind-the-scenes footage where we saw the guy who's going to be playing Lex Luthor's decoy. He was there, okay? Which means they never intended to have a Deathstroke breakout scene. Why would Deathstroke have to break Lex Luthor out? You see what I'm saying? They wouldn't have to, because it was a decoy. Man of Steel threatened my mother's scene, how far away from the farm was, and why there would be no bystanders. But if they were, why do they evaporate from the scene? Because an author forgot them? In other words, he's saying, if Superman was supposed to scare away some bystanders because he kind of got mad or whatever, well, where are they in all of the shots we've seen? We don't see any bystanders. Okay, so again, that was an imagining. Then he says, whoops, claiming a Whedon reshoot is a Snyder original. Tisk, tisk. And I think he's talking about where he said that this thing would have been cut out from the film. I'm assuming so it has something to do with Batman. Okay, obvious pandering fixes omitted when the film was desperate to include fixes. So they're talking about that certain fixes in the movie were omitted. I don't know what that means. They misunderstand guilt and heroic sacrifice life as one thing, creating a suicidal narrative non-existent after BVS. I won't fail him in life. In other words, Batman was never planning to die. He was never planning to be suicidal. He was all about the mission to save Superman. So they were giving this line that Batman was suicidal in this movie. And to some degree he was suicidal, I would say, because he said, I was comfortable with the trade. That was the first one. Then he was going, and Aquaman said, so your big plan was dying, you know. So Batman was a bit suicidal, but the point is, they were saying, and even I got duped by that he was suicidal, and the Wonder Woman saw that, and so that's somebody's imagination going there. There was no Hegra in the casting, so that therefore this talk about Hegra being in the movie is not true, and there was no Darkseid casting as well. LDM Film states Superman scenes were not substantially different before or after reshoots in terms of content and substance or plot. Mostly dialogue tweaks. And that's Joss Whedon, and you can see it in the movie because you can see when the CGI comes in. So you can tell it's a dialogue tweak. But in terms of the script and in terms of what Superman was doing in the film, it's the same thing. No library was used as a set or location. That is true. Literally undermines the meaning of cyborg by eliminating all organics. That's right. If Cyborg was not organic in any way, shape, or form, then he wouldn't be Cyborg. Lawrence Fishburne never filmed anything for Justice League, and many, many, many more. He's just debunking it down the way. You know. And then the other thing is, all you have to do is go to the behind-the-scene footage. Folks, go behind the scene footage, and you would see and debunk these things so easily. Don't worry, I'll get to that. I'll get to that because I have a copy of the movie, a pirated copy of the movie, and I will put the parts of the movie, like they're talking about. Oh, Batman was supposed to have more extended scenes of fighting parademons. Go watch the Zack Snyder cut when Zack Snyder's behind the screen, the big screen, and Batman's falling down fighting those parademons. That's exactly in the movie where Batman's falling down fighting the parademons. Man, the only thing Joss Whedon did in this movie, and Warner Bros. Was working in tandem with him, alright? The only thing Joss Whedon did, really, the major role he really did in this movie, was basically cut down the film to 2 hours. Okay? They had a lot of material, I'm sure 4 or 5 hours of material. This is typical of movies. 4 or 5 hours of material. You had to get it nice streamlined and get the proper story together. Honor Zach's vision. That's what he was doing. Tweak the color palette. I guess people were already tweaking it because apparently the sneak peek was what Zach and Junkie XL was doing, with maybe a little bit of Danny Elfman and Joss Whedon. So basically, Joss Whedon was tweaking the color palette. Unless post-production was doing that, and it was all Zack Snyder. He did a couple reshoots to tie together the stuff that was cut out. Okay? And finally, the last thing he did was add a little flavor of Joss Whedon in there. Real small. So with the beginning of the movie, the very beginning of the movie where you saw that little interview with Superman, that's all Joss Whedon. Now, it could have been actually something that was in the middle of the film or somewhere else, and Joss Whedon reshot it, but I doubt it. I think that's all Joss Whedon there. That's Joss Whedon. Okay? I think that's probably the only fully Joss Whedon thing in this whole entire movie. Everything else, there was a script there from Chris Terrio, so I'm guessing Joss Whedon just allowed the actors to reinterpret the script a little bit more to lighten up some of the moment. Because if you look at Superman, he had a scowl on his face with his fight against the Justice League, and even then, he still had a scowl on his face when Joss Whedon had him do reshoots. But some of the reshoots, because we knew there was a little bit more action. There was a little bit more action scenes in there. And Joss Whedon cut it down so he could get it fit together. And that's what the reshoots were for. To fit together, to tie together certain things so that it would fit together and you get a better narrative. I'm telling you right now, Joss Whedon pulled off something that's very difficult to do, which is get a movie truncated to 2 hours, keep it interesting, keep it exciting, keep the tension, keep the tone of the previous director, keep the vein in which the previous director was going, and because this is not a Joss Whedon film, you can tell, and still at the same time keep the film so it ends hopefully, all right, and get it to a recognizable format so that people could see, okay, I can follow this story, I can really follow this story. And that's what he did. And I'm telling you right now, he couldn't have done a better job. Okay? Only Zack Snyder could do what Zack Snyder does for Zack Snyder. Joss Whedon tried his best, and it really felt like a Zack Snyder film to me. I don't know about other people, but it was a Zack Snyder film to me. Right? A little zany on the end, but... So, anyway, the point is, this is Man of Steel Answers. And there's some people in the comment section who also agree with Man of Steel Answers, which is pretty awesome. And what I'm trying to say to people is, this is what everybody's going off of. This differences article, which is false. It's fallacious. It's filled with rumors. Anytime somebody has to tell you a source, that's not cool. Name your source, because if you can't name your source, then we got to fact check whatever the source says to see if it's true. And that's the one thing critical thinking tells you to do. Fact check things. I try to separate my opinion from facts. Alright guys, I went into this long enough. I hope you watched it to the end of this video. You guys have a great one.